Yeah, we should be live now.
Yay!
Robert is watching.
Oh, hi, Robert.
Hi. Hi.
Okay, so welcome to the very first issue of BookTubePrize Talks. We're going to start today by talking about the Octafinals nonfiction division. And with me, I have 4 of the judges for the nonfiction books. And I would ask you to introduce yourself quickly. I'll start myself. My name is Charlie. I was judging the fiction division, so I won't be sharing any insights today, but I'm very much looking forward to you. We are hosting this on my brand new BookTube channel, which isn't established because I just started this for the BookTube prize, basically, and I hope to become a regular BookTuber. I've been watching BookTube for so long and I'm enjoying it so much. So yeah, so that's me. Emma, could you go on and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Emma Abe Books, and I also have a YouTube channel. It's called Emma Abe Books, and I judge the nonfiction round for Group F.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Stephanie?
Oh, sorry. I can't remember what group I judged or the name of it, but it's also Group F. My name is Stephanie. I am from Time to Read. And nonfiction Group F. I'm sorry.
Great. Priscilla, could you go on?
Yeah, so my name is Priscilla, and I have a BookTube channel called Bookie Charm. And I forget what round that I judged because I'm also judging for the quarterfinals, but I want to say it was Group H, the last one.
Okay, great. And Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel. I have a BookTube channel just at my name down below, Rachel Morrow, and I judged the quarterfinals nonfiction Group B.
Cool. So we have a few different groups, and we'll just see how you what you were thinking about the books in your groups and which made it on to the next round. If anybody's watching and wants to add some comments, you're welcome. If you have any specific questions to the judges, feel free to ask them. And otherwise, we'll just talk a little bit about the judging experience. Were you judging for the first time, or are some of you already experienced judges from the BookTube Prize first round last year?
This was my first year. I haven't done it before. I am a huge fan of Doris Sanders, and so she judged last year, and she talked about it, and then hipped me to the fact that Robert was doing this, and I was like, I need to be involved, please. And he let me, thankfully.
Yep, this is my first round as well, judging, and I had a similar experience because I really love Kazin from Always Doing. And she judged last year for fiction. And when I got wind that there was a nonfiction round, I knew that was something I wanted to be a part of. So I was really excited.
Yeah, I have very similar stories. My first year on BookTube ever, but I heard from the history bookshelf, and I was like, wait, I need to do this.
That's great. Rachel?
I followed Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures. She alerted me last year in January, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And so I sort of followed along and unofficially cherry-picked books to read last year and had a lot of fun. I'm like, I need to be a judge, so I signed up immediately.
Great.
This year.
Jody just joined us. Can you hear us? I think maybe the video is frozen. So, okay. See, I knew we would have a little bit of technical difficulties, but okay, Jody, if you can hear us, maybe you can just quickly send a message or say something if I can hear you. No. Okay, we'll just give this a minute and see if that works out. Okay, so What was it like judging? Did you how did you cope with the 6 books in 2 months? Was that like easy for you because you read like tons anyway, or was it difficult? Was it hard to read the specific books that you didn't pick yourself, but that you then had to read for the prize?
I feel like you want to go first. You can go first.
Well, I just, so I have no reading 6 books is fine. The problem is that you're, being told to read books that, you wouldn't regularly pick. And I'll be honest, I think that we're all lucky. I think the nonfiction is a lot easier to read than fiction if you're not picking, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like fiction, there's so many more things involved in what goes into a good fiction book as opposed to nonfiction. So like the amount of books was fine, but it was really difficult because I'm a backlist reader, like an aggressive backlist reader. So reading so many new, I kept like being like, okay, what is the paperback release date? Okay, it's March 13th. So I need to make sure that I go and get this book when it's a paperback, because I am a book hoarder. I don't use the library, even though I should, but I can't now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But the quantity was fine. It just was difficult because there was a couple of books that I just really did not want to be reading.
How did you fare with those? Did you then?
I DNF'd one of them.
Okay.
And then the other one I didn't technically finish before the round ended. It just, it's really hard for me to force things, but I did end up finishing it, and my rating was appropriate. I knew it would be. It was the Oliver Sacks book. No one really liked that, I don't think, to be honest.
No.
No. I was like,
it's not bad.
It's just so boring. It's so boring. So I felt very, very confident with my selection, especially because the other 4 books were so strong, in my opinion. The one I DNF'd was Midnight in Chernobyl. We don't have to get into that yet if you don't want to, but
I think we'll talk about a little bit about that, favorites and the opposite later on. Yeah. So how did the others feel with their group and the amount of reading you had to do in a certain time frame?
For me, it wasn't like the amount of reading was not an issue. For me, it was the fact that I had to kind of find my books. I don't buy books often, or if I do buy books, they're often like backlist books, and I get them from used bookstores. So actually finding places that I could find the books and get them have them on hold from the library and get them in at the correct time, that was a balancing act.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a library reader as well, so I had that kind of struggle. I felt like I was at the mercy of my library when they came in. It's like, oh, I got to read that one next. That's got to happen now.
Yeah.
And it's now or never. It's not happening. So that definitely was something I struggled with. And in terms of like my group, I feel like half of my books were very much in my wheelhouse. I really like memoirs. I really like social science or journalist books. And then the other half were more challenging. So I tried to spread them out as much as possible within the time frame. So pick up a memoir, and then I would pick up like a biography, which was so boring. but that was kind of how I tried to deal with some of the struggles I had.
Yeah, sure.
Was it that Harper Lee one? I guess we're not going to talk about it yet, but
no, it was 1984. The one.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
I tried to watch as many of people's reactions, but
I spent like a day like watching people's videos.
Yeah. So Rachel, how did you cope with your group? Were you content with it?
I'll be honest here. I'm primarily a fiction reader, so I felt a little like an infiltrator. I signed up to be a judge for both, and then I went where the algorithm told me. I do read nonfiction, and less of it, but some. And these definitely expanded my views of. I mean, some of the memoirs were sort of similar to what I've read before, but in terms of the histories, it's sort of a broader view or a different view of history than the usual like histories and biographies I read. So that was really interesting to me. I mean, one of my books was kind of a slog, but I still kind of I appreciated it for what it did too. So I was really lucky. I really enjoyed all of the books in Group B. I guess I'm a pretty easy reader, but I got them all from the library, and it was pretty. It feels like easy times back when you could get things from the library when they were open, but it all more or less worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, sure. And did any of you have like a certain strategy? Did you have a checklist that a book would need to fulfill so to make it to the top spots? Or did you go by first impressions, by emotions, topics that you always liked or didn't like? Or what kind of played a role in your judging?
I mean, I don't think topic really had that much to do with it. I just, just go with what I feel. And I mean, writing is a big deal in general for me. I guess I am pickier than I thought that I was. And I feel like with regards to nonfiction, I am very, very particular about the way that it's written, which is hence the DNF. So, you just gotta feel it. I did not strategize. I was not thinking. I didn't even think that people were strategizing. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
I think it's hard to have like a checklist or like items that you're looking for with nonfiction, because the books in each group are so different. And it varies from book to book, really. So I didn't have any sort of like checklist. I kind of just tried to look at it subjectively and then objectively, and how it impacted me or what kind of feeling I got from them, which is hard to say from book to book. But I just ranked them as I read along. And if the author set out to do, I think, what they were trying to do, it typically was ranked higher for me than others.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you like
kind of went in with...
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I kind of went in with the vague idea of, well, I've read some memoirs before, or I've read some histories before, I've read some biographies before, and that I'd maybe in my head try to judge it against how I thought it did in those particular categories, and then go from there in the ranking. But I'm pretty sure after I thought through all that, I just went with my gut about what made a good or a bad book. I don't know if anyone watched Olive's video at a Book Olive, her wrap up of the nonfiction. I really liked what she said about trying to sort of privilege quality of writing over the importance of the topic. I mean, I think that's maybe in nonfiction one of maybe the challenges in a way, because there's a lot of some books that are more important in topic matter than others, but in a way, a prize could be seen as more of a writing and quality prize. So I don't know. That to me, I think is one of the challenges.
Yeah, I really I watched that video too, and I kind of agreed when I looked at which books like fell out in the first round. It seemed to me like most of them were memoirs. And I haven't read most of the ones that have fallen out, so I can't speak to their quality, but I do kind of understand that frustration. And it's weird as a judge trying to make that line, because if you are going off of how it impacted you, maybe the memoirs don't impact you as much as a more hard-hitting topic. But I don't know.
Interesting. I feel like usually memoirs affect me more, like on an emotional. I'm an emotional reader, so maybe that's because I'm a primarily fiction reader. But I feel like a memoir, like my number one spot was a memoir. We'll talk about it. I feel like
you don't have to necessarily make it a secret.
Well, I mean, How We Fight for Our Lives was my number one pick, and it got knocked out. But I just thought it was so emotionally powerful that I had to make it number one, even though the other three, like more classic nonfiction books that made it through were all fantastic. And I'm glad that they did, but it is really hard. I feel like judging memoir in general is really difficult because it's, someone's life. So where do you, I don't know. It's just so uncomfortable. I mean, again, I mostly like emotional how it makes you feel, because you can't really judge the subject matter of a person's life.
That's what I was thinking when thinking about touching fiction or nonfiction. I was kind of like, well, nonfiction is fiction is broad, but nonfiction is like, I don't know, 10 different categories at least. And then how do I judge a history book against somebody's life, for example, because that has to be a completely different kind of reading experience. And I was thinking about that being the hardest part, probably, to compare things that aren't the same, essentially. So you felt that too?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I didn't personally really think about it, because I just went with my gut. So I knew like what book I enjoyed the most, what book I thought like impacted me the most, and what I thought was most important in general. But I think that I was really lucky, because of the 6 books, 4 of them I thought were amazing, like 4.5 and 5-star reads, and then the other 2 I was like, see you later. So it was really easy. Although I will say, like having to pick which book was number 3 and which book was number 4 was really challenging. That specifically was difficult, but
I really struggled with that too with our group. That was very difficult. But we had different rankings. So I was very lucky. Like all of the books that I put in the top 3, they made it to the top 3. So I wasn't upset.
Well, I'm not upset, but I just need everyone to read that memoir, because it was so good.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. Writing alone, regardless of the subject matter, the writing by itself was fabulous.
So good. I'm about to go reread that book right now.
If you get a chance, like read it with the audiobook. Have you read it with the audiobook?
I'm not a huge audio person.
Oh no.
No, I can't do it.
No, but it was really good with the audiobook, because the narrator, the author reads it, and he's very you can tell it's his story, and he just does a really good job.
Okay, I'll try, but no promises. I'll go on Libby and see if it's
Is that when you talk about the writing being exceptional, do you think you could have ranked a book for number 1 if the writing was okay, but the subject was that important, or the research was that good? How important is writing in nonfiction?
I had a book like that where I struggled with that, because I thought that the journalist application, the journalist interrogation of what was being done in that book was really well, but it was just so scattered, and the structure of the book, I think more so than the writing, was what I struggled with.
What book?
That was Guest House for Young Widows.
Okay.
It was a discussion from a journalist with a bunch of women that were in ISIS, and that were either like freed or escaped ISIS. And it was really interesting, and it was really broad, interviewing 13 women over like years and years and years. So from that perspective, it was exceptional. It was really done well, but I think that it struggled a lot with its structure, with keeping track of what was happening, when was happening, with who, and that I think was why I ranked it a little bit lower. That definitely took away from it. So I do consider both, I think, or I try to as a judge.
Did that one make it through?
That one, I think, did make it through. Yeah, that was one of my top 3 picks, and it did make it through. And I wonder too, because I struggled like you with the 3rd and 4th ranked, and I wondered if I had ranked it 4th, if it had been maybe like on the line of making it through.
I can't wait to see all of the rankings at the end. We're going to be able to see that, right, Robert? You said that. Okay.
I think so. Maybe Robert could answer that question, because I'm also looking forward to that, really.
Good to know.
I also
especially in a group that you judged yourself. Excuse me?
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying that I think round 2 is also going to be very difficult in terms of.
Are you all doing nonfiction for round 2?
I am.
Yes. I'm doing fiction for round 2.
Yeah, my group for round 2, I feel like, is really strong. So it's going to be difficult for sure, I think.
Gosh, I have like my bullet journal spread, and I haven't written down the books that made it yet into so I don't know like what I watched the video, but I don't have it cemented, so I'm curious. But I guess you can't really talk about it, so I don't know.
No talking about the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Octafinals.
I'm just so curious.
Yeah.
Was that, by the way, was that hard to, because I know I judge fiction and it was very difficult not to think openly, not to post any updates and compare my reading experience. Was that hard in nonfiction? Not to be allowed to talk about it for 2 months?
Yeah, I talked. Sorry, you go.
I guess I always find it difficult because I constantly write reviews on Goodreads, and I even have a literary newsletter every month. So I was like chafing against that in the beginning, like, oh, I need to talk about these books, and I also talk about them on BookTube. So I had to, scale myself back and say, just write your reviews privately. You can't share them for 2 months, but it worked out.
I mentioned what books I was reading, and I regret that now. Just because especially with Midnight in Chernobyl, sorry, I really cannot stand that book. And I felt really bad because I was like, oh, I'm reading this book. And then people are like, oh, that's on my list. And I'm like, internally, I just want to be like, don't do it, or get it from the library. Don't. I'm sorry, Robert. I know that you really like that book. So I hated that aspect of it. I felt like I wasn't able to, usually you have a little bit of discussion about how you're feeling about the book while you're saying that you're reading it. So I'm not going to do that for anymore. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and talk about it at the end. I will say, did you personally, I feel like a few people maybe did their reviews as they were reading the books and then edit it together.
I definitely did that.
Okay. I wish that I had done that, because going back after the fact, your memories
Trying
never
to remember.
Yeah. And also, you don't have that same, like, I just finished this book and let me talk about it right now feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that, I think, for this.
Yeah. That I think was very helpful for me, but I was very strict on my channel of just kind of saying, like, I said nothing about which books I was reading. So I would just, like, when it came to the wrap up, I'd be like, oh, I read a book for the BookTube prize, but I can't talk about it. Right. But I also have the advantage of, like, not a lot of my friends in my real life, in my everyday life, know about this. So I could very easily just go up to them and be like, this book, I loved it, and get my thoughts out that way, and not having to, like, risk, I don't know, people finding out on the internet.
Real life
I
cheating.
talk to my dad a lot.
Yeah, I really like doing sort of a vlogging style whenever I'm reading for a long period of time like that, just because it does keep everything fresh and like how I felt immediately after reading it. And at the end, I can kind of recap and kind of think, well, this set with me this way, and this affected me long term even more or less, or talk about the rankings at the end. So I really like that style, and I like seeing other people do that way too, because it's just really interesting to see what affected someone else differently in the moment. And yeah, I the only thing that's bad about that is that when you have to get all the clips together and edit it, it's a pain, because I can go on in the moment after I've finished something, I can go on about a book for a while, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so long, and I'm gonna have to edit this down to something coherent and somewhat cohesive. So if you don't like editing, that would be something you might want to avoid. But
I don't edit typically, but I feel like, if you just glue the clips together, that's pretty easy. It's when you have to go back and, like, stop and, and listen to yourself say the same to get the right spot. I can't do it.
yeah.
Just keep it in.
So, Rachel, you mentioned that you had your newsletter, which is in written form, so maybe easier to keep, like, a running log, easier than vlogging along. Was anybody else keeping? Yeah.
I guess I don't think I'll ever be the vlogging type. I think, well, I ramble a bit in Friday Reads videos, but usually I think I need a little bit of time to process things. So I was able to use my privately this time written reviews and the kind of maybe have a summary for myself to think about. I did my wrap up for the not the quarterfinals, for the Octafinals, just right after Robert posted the results. So I think that was easier for me. I mean, just sort of, I could summarize easier because I wrote the reviews. So that helped me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I keep like a notes on my phone while I'm reading. When I'm like having a thought, I just write it down. But I don't usually write reviews a lot. So maybe for once in a while for Goodreads, but not in like the style that Rachel you mentioned. So what about the others? Did you keep notes to have your thoughts fresh, or did you just if you weren't vlogging, did you just go back and think back a month about your reading experience? Or
Yeah, I don't prepare for things very well. I am not a fancy person who prepares. I just kind of let it all come out, and then that's it. I would like to. I think I'm gonna I tried doing a vlog style, but most of it was me complaining about Midnight in Chernobyl, so I decided not to, because I started reading that one quite early. So there's only so much of that you can put in the video. But I think I wanted to do a project this year of annotating all of my books, but it's not really happening. But I feel like something more. Like, I wish that I was like you, Rachel, writing down reviews. That would be so nice.
keeping a written record, yeah.
It keeps it fresher up here if you write it down with your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember books better that way sometimes. Then sometimes I'm like, I wrote a review a few years ago, and what is this?
Yeah, I take notes. I take notes as I read as well, even though I'm like vlogging as I'm reading as well, just because I have library books, and if I have to return them, they're gone. And if I want to remember something, it's easier for me to have like a sticky note or like a note in my phone somewhere, like, oh yeah, that part, I want to talk about that. So even with vlogging, I take notes too.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So when the wrap-ups and reading vlogs came out after the decision was announced, did you go straight away and look at your group's other judges, what they thought about the books, or wasn't that important, more or less important than the other books maybe?
I think it was exciting. I really was excited to see other people in my group to see what they thought, but I only saw 2 other people post videos from my group, and I was really excited more so than other groups, just because I felt really strongly about some than others, and I wondered if maybe it was a me thing or if others felt the same. So that was interesting to see for sure, people from my own group.
Yeah. I feel like I'm so behind, on BookTube constantly. I'm subscribed to over 300 people, and I'm just like, it's very difficult for me to watch videos like I used to. When I first started BookTube in 2014, I was addicted, and so like I put a lot more effort into watching videos, and so I'm really disappointed because I want to watch all of them. There's literally not enough hours in the day.
Enough days in the year.
Yeah, there are not enough days in the year either. But I was really interested, especially because I hated Midnight in Chernobyl so much. I'm sorry. Just the writing is so bad. And so I really wanted to watch, like, I'm curious about other people's perspectives specifically on that book, just because of my strong reaction towards it. But I wanted to see all of them because I don't know what the other books were like. So, as like a recommendation too, you got to watch all of them.
Yeah.
So I have the playlist open and a tab. So every day I'm trying to watch like 1 or 2 of them so I can get through them all.
There's a playlist?
Oh yeah, there's a playlist.
Yeah. Robert put together a playlist. So over at the BookTubePrize channel, you can just go on. He collected all the videos.
I'm just searching on YouTube, and I'm like, this is so difficult.
I don't know how he finds them because
he's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I was also because when I searched for the BookTubePrize videos, they weren't all listed. So I guess the YouTube algorithm doesn't think that I need to watch all of them. I don't know. So I was very happy. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, I usually filter it by like a month, and then because then you only get the ones for like this year, and then just go through that way.
Yeah.
That's what I do with like BookTube newbie tags and like all of that. I like filter it by like a week or something like that just to get the new ones.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, okay. Well, let's talk a bit about the books. So, what were your favorites? Why were they your favorites? What was there a big surprise in your group? Maybe you could share a bit about your group and the titles. Nobody's
I feel like
Yeah.
yeah.
I was surprised all three of my favorites were the top three. I was really expecting, I don't know, not for my top three favorites to be the ones to advance. I thought.
Which were they? Could you give the titles?
I was in Group B, and the three titles that advanced were Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino, and then we had Invisible Women about data gaps, gender bias, and the next one was American Predator about a serial killer in the U.S. and very propulsive read, I thought. And I guess I just wasn't sure because I mean, it's the first time I've judged anything, and I don't feel as comfortable, I guess, with nonfiction. So I'm like, I felt pretty optimistic because I liked all of my books well enough or respected them well enough. So I'm like, whatever goes ahead, that's fine. But I was just really surprised when it was the exact three that I liked that apparently the other judges liked, but I don't think anyone from my group has posted a video, but I've been like waiting, like, come on, guys, say why, you know, because I was just really curious about what they thought of the books too. And I mean, I'm sure the ranking was a little different. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I was surprised that my top three also were the three that made it on, because like my number 3 spot, I debated whether I wanted it to be 3 or 4.
Mhm.
So I wondered if maybe someone else would have a higher ranking for that one that would have gone through instead of my third spot, which I would have been okay with. My top 3 were Parkland, the Oral History of 9/11, and Guest House for Young Widows. And I was really happy. I thought that they were all really good books, so I'm glad they're moving on.
Yeah.
So
It's already.
Stephanie and I have the same group. So my top 3 were the 3 that made it through. So my number 1 was Heartbeat of Wounded Knee. I will say though that I'm very like biased when it comes to like that one. I'm not unbiased. I just like, and Native American history has been something that I've always been fascinated by and have been studying for a while. And I was always frustrated because I always felt like there was this gap from like Wounded Knee to like the pipeline. I was like, what is in between? So I was always like really, really fascinated by that topic. So once like that book came out, I knew I wanted to buy it, and I do have it. It's like up there. So I knew like when I got assigned that book, I had a really high hopes for it, and I was really excited. So like, and then when I read it, it was like everything that I wanted it to be. So I was like, knew that was going to be my number 1. And then I felt like the Uninhabitable Earth like really surprised me because I wasn't expecting much, or I just didn't know what to expect. But I really like that one too. I ranked that one 3rd, and then 2nd was I ranked Say Nothing as 2nd, and that was like, again, like I hadn't heard much about it. I didn't know much about Ireland, so I was just like, what? The entire time I was just like, what is happening? What is happening?
That book blew my mind. It was so good. I made my partner read that one, or like, I guess I didn't make him, but in me talking about books, that's the one that he chose to read. Like out of the other ones, that was so good.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
I'm happy with the 3 that made it through too. But again,
but let me say, like, I just want to stand up and defend Midnight in Chernobyl a little bit because Stephanie's been bashing on it the whole live stream.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on it, please?
Stephanie had like an issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, but mainly like with the writing of it.
The writing is terrible.
I don't agree. But
that's personal preference.
I think it's just a personality thing. Like I think I watched your video and you were like, I like facts. I like, give me the facts. Yeah. And that's not what Midnight in Chernobyl was. It was like more of a story. And like to your point, I think you also said the inverse of how Heartbeat of Wounded Knee did that. was that Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, like the author like did all the research to find out what people were thinking. Whereas you didn't feel the same way about how Midnight in Chernobyl was done. I thought it was fine. I really liked it. It did not make it into my top 3, but it was neck and neck for a little bit. And yeah.
So was that your number 4 then? No pressure.
It was my number 4. Yeah, personally.
I know. I feel really bad because I'm sure the book has really great information in it. Like I'm sure that it would have taught me. I think the problem is, so you said that you had really high expectations for the Heartbeat at Wounded Knee. Or is it of Wounded Knee? Heartbeat
of Wounded Knee. Yeah.
And so I think I had those very high expectations for Midnight in Chernobyl because I wanted to learn about it. And when you have high expectations for a book, it can either go really great or really poorly. And it just, honestly, that's how I have like a DNF shelf on Goodreads, and a few of them, like the Moonwalking with Einstein and the Inventor and the Tycoon, like these nonfiction books where the author is trying so hard to like stylize and make it like a narrative to get people that read fiction to read my nonfiction. It just drives me crazy. And I really should stop talking about it because I can rant a lot. So I will stop.
That's very much how Midnight in Chernobyl is written. So if you really don't like that style of writing, then that's not the book for you.
I wasn't too mean though, right? I explained why.
No, you explained it.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I feel really bad because this person wrote this book and spent a lot of time. But it is totally a personal preference thing. But
yeah, no, I get it. I have personal preference things too that are just like personally, I'm very like I'm like half and half when it comes to memoirs. They're sometimes really good, they're sometimes terrible, and I don't like them. So I get it. I really get it. It's a genre stylistic thing for you. Yeah.
Jody was just mentioning in the comments that there was one book in her group that she would have picked up organically, but she enjoyed the whole group. Was there, like with the books in your group, did you have like a surprise, something that you would have thought, oh, I'd never picked that up on my own, but now I have to read it, and it was actually a good experience? It was interesting, or any kind of surprises like that? No, you all read broadly, and
I feel like the 4 that I would have picked up on my own are the 4 that I liked, no, that's a lie, because I would have picked up Midnight in Chernobyl. So the only one that I was not interested in reading was the Oliver Sacks book, to be honest. And that's just because I've read him before and I found him boring the first time and I found him boring the second time. So
yeah, the 2 that I probably would have picked up from my group actually made my number 1 and 2 spot. So yeah.
Okay.
I think I had 2, and I think one was my first place and one was my 6th place. They were the 2 memoirs, and I just I really liked my 6th place one, but I guess just trying to compare it to, I don't know, the others, I thought there's nothing in here that I didn't think you could get out of fiction, and I wanted to privilege nonfiction, but then I put a memoir as my first. So, but there was other stuff in that.
Which one did you write?
It was Trick Mirror.
Okay.
Oh, that was my first.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
It's kind of a memoir.
Oh, Trick Mirror?
Trick Mirror?
Yeah, I want to read that so bad.
I really liked that. I read that last year. It's really good.
Which one was 6th?
I put Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls by T. Kira Madden, which I thought was really well written, but I just thought it was a little disjointed and just in comparison to the others. I wasn't as impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, personally, the one that I would not have picked up would be How We Fight for Our Lives, just because it's a memoir. And again, like I'm not the biggest memoir reader.
Yeah.
So when I picked it up, I was like, okay, it's a memoir, gonna see what happens. And it was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And I was really happy.
Do you guys feel like your expectation of a book before going into it affects greatly your reading experience?
For me, personally?
Just like in general, yeah.
I don't know. I try to go in as I don't do a lot of research about books. Like, usually before I read them. Usually it's honestly whatever gets checked out to me from the library first, and I just kind of read it. But I think, I don't know, it might have had something to do like with my rankings, with this round, because I remember when I got my list, I had a rough idea of just from seeing the titles and knowing what I knew about the books, which wasn't a lot for most of them. I had an idea of where I would rank them based on my interest in the subject material. I think that affects me more. It's like, is the subject something I'm interested in? And if it's not something I'm interested in, is the author able to grab me and make me want to learn more about it when I leave reading this book? And I think that all of my top 3, like, they did that. Either I was interested or the author was able to like get me interested in the subject that I never really put much thought into before. So, yeah.
I think that for me, usually I try. Sometimes what I expect from a book does affect how I rank it or rate it or whatever. But with the BookTube Prize, I try to put on my judging hat and try to go in pretty open-minded for most of the books, and especially for the books that just were out of my comfort zone. Trying to go in pretty open-minded, like, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to be very objective when I read this, so that way that I don't have too many bias playing whenever I'm trying to rank them in the end.
Yeah.
Priscilla, what would you say is like the book that was the most out of your comfort zone in your group?
It was probably the biography, the 1984 biography of George Orwell. First of all, I've never read 1984. I only read Animal Farm by George Orwell, so I don't really have that. I feel it's just a very niche kind of book. Like, it would speak to readers that really love George Orwell, that really love 1984. So it's really hard to kind of interest me in that. And also it's a biography, so it's a lot of history. It was just really, really dry. I think it had to have been a lot more to really get me interested in it, and obviously the other judges in my group, because it didn't move on. So yeah, that one for sure.
Okay. So the books that didn't make the cut, were there not especially in your group, but overall, did we lose some that you would think that would definitely make it? Some like big names? I mean, I think, for example, the Elton John biography didn't make it, and that was like, in my perception, it was like a hyped book that everybody was talking about it, and just fell through. I haven't read it. I have no clue about it. I was just like, I don't know if it's good or not. That would be out of my comfort zone, I guess.
I haven't even heard anyone talk about that book in general, though. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I don't remember what made it through, so I'm looking it up.
Well, I read it, even though it wasn't in my group. I'm trying to read most of the books that were in the Octafinals. It's like a personal project. So I read that one, and I was reading it, and I enjoyed it. I was like, this is good. He was very raw and very honest with what he was going through at the time. It was very interesting. I'm of a younger generation, so I wasn't really interested in this till he started talking about the musicals he started writing. It was like, that's the Elton John that I personally grew up with.
Yeah.
With things like Billy Elliot, Aida, Lion King, Road to El Dorado. Those are like the staples. So
You wrote those?
he wrote the music for all of those.
Really?
Yeah, he wrote the music for all of those. Yeah, which were like, that's the Elton John like of my childhood.
Yeah.
So it wasn't poorly written at all. It was very good, but I remember distinctly having the feeling, and I even said that I made a video, I think it's coming out today, where I was just like, I don't think this is gonna get past the round. And I don't remember what group it was in, but I was just like, I was like, this is good, but it's very kind of like, I feel like it's for people who really like Elton John. If you really like Elton John,
Yeah.
then you're going to read the book.
Yeah.
If you don't, or just kind of like, I don't know, but I feel that way about a lot of biographies or autobiographies of artists. So if you like, artists or rock musicians, you're going to want to read their biography. But if you have no interest, then there isn't really much appeal. And I think that's just the nature of that type of book.
Definitely, yeah. It was. I didn't want to like make up a discussion about this book specifically. That was one of the ones that I had like on my list that I thought would be, I don't know, well loved, and it wasn't. So I was kind of, for me, it was interesting to see that one drop. But also, I think The Body by Bill Bryson didn't make it, which is also like a big name.
Mm-hmm.
The one book that oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. Okay.
The one book that I saw that didn't make it, that I really wanted to make it, was How We Fight for Our Lives for Saeed Jones. I thought, was that from both of your groups? Stephanie and Emma?
That was my number one.
Oh, that was your number one.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me happy to hear. But it was so beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, he's a poet, right? So I felt like his memoir, when I read it last year, it felt very lyrical and poetry-like to me. And for a memoir, I thought it was really good. So I was actually surprised it didn't make it through.
Honestly, the three that did, like, I totally understand objectively why the other, like, the Uninhabitable Earth, The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, and Say Nothing were, to me, like, basically perfect nonfiction books. Like, they were so good. So I'm not surprised, even though I did better, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's like the struggle that I had too. It was just like, this was so good. This was a really good memoir, and it was really well written. If any of you out there have written any of Maya Angelou's memoirs or nonfiction works, it reads very similarly to that, where it just feels very lyrical, very, very, very clear that it's a poet writing a memoir, which makes for a very enjoyable reading experience.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, it's hard. And it personally did not grab me as emotionally as the other books did, personally.
But Jody just mentioned in the comments that The Five also didn't make it, and that was also a surprise for me, because
What is that one?
was that again? That's the one about the five women that checked the Ripper.
Okay. Sorry, I really don't pay attention to books. I just like grab whatever I feel like.
But is it just my because she also says it was so hyped on BookTube, and that was for me the same experience. Everybody seemed to have been reading this book and enjoying it.
Yeah.
And then it didn't make it.
I haven't read that one. I'm very curious to see why people didn't make it through. I don't know what I'm looking at. What else it was up against? I don't know. It was up against some pretty good books.
Okay, well, it has Catch and Kill, and
Yeah, Catch and Kill. Maybe you should talk to someone, and she said were the three books.
Maybe you should talk to someone.
Maybe you should talk to someone.
Yeah, what is that book?
Oh,
that one I've heard a lot.
That's
Sorry, you can go.
I mean, that's well, actually, I'm reading it now for the quarterfinals, but it's about therapy. The therapist who wrote it. It's basically about her sessions, I think, with patients, and then with her own therapist. I haven't technically started it yet, but I am reading it for the quarterfinals.
I've heard good things.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah,
I'm super curious about that one.
Yeah.
The only book that I think I'd heard about before this were The Collected Schizophrenias and In the Dream House.
Oh, The Collected Schizophrenias didn't make it through either, did it? That was one I really liked last year.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it did.
What are your feelings of Priscilla, the fact that it didn't make it through?
I thought it was a really good book. I mean, Esme Wang has just a really unique perspective because she's dealing with schizophrenia, the schizophrenias, and she's also a researcher. So she has a very like analytical approach to kind of understanding her own mental illness. And she also, it's essays, right? So I guess maybe that is why it didn't sit well with people, maybe because I know certain essays were obviously stronger than others. I think that comes with the territory of any essay collection. Just some are just better than others.
Yeah.
So maybe that was why, but I thought it was really strong and super unique and really well written.
I mean, the books that it has solitary in that group too, about that one guy that was in solitary. Like, I feel like the problem too is you just, it depends what books it's up against.
Yeah,
it could be really good, if not.
Yeah,
it was also up against In the Dream House.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one was good too.
I've heard lots of really good things about In the Dream House from people who don't even read nonfiction. So I think that speaks to.
Well, she's just such a good writer. So
yeah,
that was my first 5-star book of the year. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I feel like it's kind of experimental in the way it's written because it's the most like nonfiction book, like memoir. It's so different. She writes like really, I want to say like magical realism, and she incorporates a lot of just strange things in her memoir. It's really different. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
That's one of the few nonfiction, or one of the few new releases that I purchased, like, on my own. I don't usually purchase new books in hardcover, but that one I bought because I was like, I have to read this, and then I haven't read it yet. So classic BookTube problem, right?
Too many books, not enough time.
Exactly. I need to change I have a friend that keeps saying I need to change my channel name to No Time to Read instead of
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll just do a quick closing round. Maybe tell us what you're reading at the moment. Not if it's for the for the quarterfinals, obviously, because you're not allowed to talk about it. But maybe there's some other interesting book that you just have fresh on your mind that you want people to read, or anything. Or if there's anything else you want to share about your experience with the first round.
I can't talk about what I'm reading right now. It's for the quarterfinals. So it's kind of a tough one.
I'm reading The Feast of the Goat right now by Mario Vargas Llosa. My mom is Dominican, and I'm, I just know nothing about the Dominican Republic, so I'm trying to get in there. And it is actually really interesting, I think, because it's a fictionalized retelling of historical events, and it is actually well written and good. And it's terrible because that Trujillo was really not a good person. So, but it's really interesting so far. I'm only like a third of the way through, so I can't 100% recommend yet. But so far, so good.
It's already on my TBR. I'm interested in that one as well.
Really, yeah, it's really interesting. There's some vulgar language though, just FYI. Some people I know really don't like that in books.
I am reading some poetry right now because April is National Poetry Month in the U.S. So I am reading something by Marcielo Hernandez Castillo, and he has a memoir that came out this year that I want to read after I finish his poetry. So maybe that would be something I could nominate next year. If I get to that in time. If I get to it in time.
Yeah, thinking ahead, very good.
Yeah. I need to be paying attention to these things so I can vote appropriately at the end of the year.
Yeah.
True. Okay.
I'm reading Toni Morrison's fourth novel, Tar Baby, for a Toni Morrison reading project. So
which ones
definitely
have you read
backlist,
so far?
but it's well, her first three, The Bluest Eye, Sula, and Song of Solomon, and now I'm reading Tar Baby, and so I haven't read any of her other work, so it's a new project for me as I go along. Very exciting. I mean, she's a challenging writer. She's so symbolic and metaphorical in what she's doing with her characters and her themes, but her writing is so beautiful. I mean, what she does with dialogue, especially, I really love how the characters come alive through her dialogue, and so it's been fun too because it's a reading project with some other booktubers. So sometimes we get to talk about it on Boxer. So
Cool.
that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I'm reading The Feast of the Goat with a couple of booktubers, or a booktuber and a viewer. Very fun.
Wow, great. Emma, what's on your?
So good. I'm embarking on a reading project where I'm rereading all of the Percy Jackson and related media by Rick Riordan. So I'm currently on the last hero. I'm almost done with that. I've got about an hour left on the audiobook, and it's a trip down memory lane and having a bunch of fun with it.
That's cool. Okay. Well, I think that's it for today. I guess I thought it was very interesting to hear about the judging experiences and how what kind of a bag of books you were given and what you did with it, and so how it all came out. So I had the same experience for fiction, but I think it's really different for nonfiction because you do have like a very, I think you have to have a different approach for nonfiction, definitely. Yeah. So very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jody, for sticking with us in the comments. I'm sorry Jody couldn't make it because of technical difficulties. So yeah, well, I guess we keep learning with this. And thank you all. Have fun reading on, judging on. And we'll see each other on BookTube. And thank you, Robert, for also joining us and for doing this whole BookTube prize thing. I think it's great. So
Thank you.
see you soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Charlie.
Bye.